সুপ্রিয় দর্শক সবাইকে স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি টিভিএন 24 আয়োজিত নিয়মিত অনুষ্ঠান টিভিএন অ্যানালিসিস। আমি হাবিব রহমান আছি আপনাদের সাথে। আজকের অনুষ্ঠানটি ইমিগ্রেশন বিষয়ক না এবং ট্যাক্স বিষয় না। ট্যাক্স কিছুটা রিলেটেড থাকবে, বাট নট সিপিএ রিলেটেড অর IRS রিলেটেড। আমরা আজকে কথা বলবো আপনার সম্পদ অর্থাৎ অ্যাসেটস নিয়ে। আপনার সম্পদ কিভাবে আপনি বন্টন করতে পারেন এটি একটি ব্যাপার থাকবে, কিন্তু তার চেয়ে বড় কথা হচ্ছে এটি আপনার জীবিত অবস্থায় আপনি থাকাকালীন এটি সুরক্ষিত কিনা, আপনি যদি আপনার অবর্তমানে এটি কি সুরক্ষিত থাকবে কিনা, আপনি কাকে দিতে চান, কিভাবে দিতে চান। আপনি একটি প্রপার্টি ক্রয় করবেন এবং সেটি ধরেন আপনি এবং আপনার ওয়াইফ করছেন, কিন্তু আপনি দুজন কোয়ালিফাই করছেন, আপনার ছেলেকে নিলেন বা মেয়েকে নিলেন টু কোয়ালিফাই। হ্যাঁ, সেখানে আসলে অন্যান্য ছেলেমেয়েরা থাকলে সেই সম্পত্তির বন্টন কিভাবে হবে। এবং আপনারা মনে করতে পারেন আমরা তো শুধু কোয়ালিফাইয়ের জন্য ব্যবহার করেছি, অন্য কোনো কাজে নয়। ল যেটি আছে, প্রচলিত আইন সেভাবে কাজ করে না এবং এটি জেনে রাখাটা অত্যন্ত প্রয়োজনীয় সবার জন্যে। এই সমস্ত বিষয় নিয়ে আজকে আলোচনা করব এবং আজকে আলোচনায় আমার সাথে আছেন টুডে ইন স্টুডিও উইথ মি Affar Baksh, attorney Affar Baksh. Welcome back again.
Brother Habib, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for making time and coming here. We have many questions, and I'm sure you will be the right guy to answer those questions.
Sure, hope so.
Some of the questions seems very innocent and like, oh yeah, it's a very simple fix maybe, but I want to hear from you, and I'm sure everybody who's watching, that what does the law say, and then the impacts of it, significance of it, and at the end of the day, the consequence of it, right? So we're going to go all, but I'm going to start with the simple things because we have done a few weeks back. So let's recap a little bit. A quick recap. Difference between will, trust, and if you will add a deed. It's up to you.
Okay. So basically the differences between the will and the trust are that they're both written documents.
Correct.
But the will, I always say you get what you pay for, right? So it's a very cheap upfront, but the cost long term is much more costly than a trust. Why? Because with a will, you still have to go to the court, right? That takes about 9 months. And one of the reasons why we do the trust is that you do not have to go to the court. You just go to an attorney with the death certificate, and then within an hour you own the property. Whereas with a will, you have to get a letter, whether it's a letter of testamentary from the surrogate's court appointing the executor to get the property transferred to the kids. Second, cost, right? So the cost, again, for the will is very cheap, but in the beginning, but you have to pay for an attorney, a surrogate's attorney. So that's going to cost like $7,000 to $8,000 minimum. Whereas in a trust, the parents, would pay for it up front, and then that's it. The kids just have to pay $150 to $200, just get an attorney to just transfer, prepare what's called a new affidavit of trust, naming them a successor trustee, and that's very quick and very cost efficient. Because remember, the trust is not for you. It's for your kids, right? Third, they get the stepped-up basis, which is the fair market value of the property when you pass away, so they don't have to pay any capital gains tax. And most important, what the trust gives you that the will doesn't give you is that you can put into an asset protection trust, so that in the event your kids, they're married and in the event they get divorced, they will not lose the property. That, my friend, is much more, you could see the cost-benefit analysis, right, in doing the trust.
Yeah, and the deed.
Indeed, deed is just, they have this new thing that New York started with transfer and death. But again, it's like a will. I mean, there's no benefit to it as far after the child passes away. You lose that asset protection for them. So now it becomes part of their marital estate and is subject to divorce. So
right.
Yeah, I would not.
In coming days we're going to deep down even more, so it's clear to everybody. But meantime, when you were talking about this, there's a question came in. Tamanna Aziz, she said, আপনার প্রশ্নের জন্য ধন্যবাদ আপনাকে তামান্না. Which one is better, will or trust?
Yeah, I mean, again, I always tell people you cannot. It's not the question of can you afford to do the trust. The question is, can you afford not to do it? Right? So can you afford let's just two things. Can you afford to lose capital gains taxes, right? Your children are going to pay about $100,000 in capital gains taxes, depending on when you bought your property. And second, can you afford to lose half of your property to an in-law that you don't know, right? A daughter-in-law or a son-in-law, right? That you don't know, right? Through divorce. And the answer is no. So obviously,
the cheaper option is will, but it's
but long term,
but the long term, there's no alternative to a trust. That's
every transaction, I do a lot of real estate. Most transactions that I see, most of the white Americans, they use a trust, just to let you know.
And there's a reason for that. And the reason being you just explained, but we can, in coming days, we will go even further. But let me ask you a follow-up question. What happens if a person dies without a will or a trust? What happens to that property?
Yeah, so this is the worst of all situations, right? Because this means that you died what's called intestate.
Correct.
So so then the intestacy laws take over, and then it has a set distribution according to EPTL, right? The estates law. But so obviously you have to go to court. So you lose the kids lose the court costs money. They lose the time. It takes about 9 months. And then now there's fighting involved, right? So even on a will contest, which is amazing, right? One of the benefits, the sister just asked, why the will or why the trust over the will? The reason is there's no contest really, right? So if you have a will or if you die intestate, you give the beneficiaries an opportunity to contest the distribution. Right? So if you said, listen, I have 2 properties, 3 properties, I'm going to give one to one child, one to another, and then a child gets upset, they could contest it. They could fight. And that's what the trust doesn't give them the opportunity to go to court, right? Basically, we put a no contest provision inside there. So in the event they do, they lose their share. But as far as on the issue of what happens without a will, when you die intestate, you lose that stepped up basis. So now they have to pay capital gains tax, and obviously it becomes marital estate. So then it becomes part of the marital estate, and it's subject to divorce.
Yeah. So Natasha Samba, everybody is doing good. Thank you for asking. She was asking.
No, it's great.
We're doing well, and I hope you are doing well too. Now, this question is generally I hear a lot, and from a law perspective, from an expert attorney who has been working on wills and trusts for many years, I want to ask you this. And many people do it, and that's why I think it's a very valid question. Should you if somebody wants to put their kids on their house title, right? And they do it before they pass away, while they're alive, they're living. Should you?
So I think we're going to be on that topic for a few minutes. Right?
Okay.
So I see it coming a lot, but I think we just have to understand first the law, right? So once if you were to gift the property to the child during its lifetime, right? I see that happen a lot. I see people, they take the easy way out, they take a deed, they put it into the child's name. The consequences of that are significant. Number one, again, it's part of their marital property. Number two, they lose the stepped up basis. So you have to understand what the stepped up basis is, right? So this was something that was fought back when the Democrats were in control. They wanted to remove, AOC and Bernie wanted to remove with stepped up basis, you get the fair market value of when the person passes away. You bought the property for $500,000, you're now worth $1 million, right? The property, you would get the basis at $1 million. If you do a gift, they get it at $500,000. So now they're paying this capital gains tax, right? And again, you lose it to divorce, right? So the parents gave it to the kid, and then all of a sudden the kid gets divorced, they end up losing the property. So it's really, it makes no sense to me why you would do that. You're going to give it to your child, give it to them in the trust, right? And again, we just went through the benefits of the trust. So you should do it. I can't express how important it is to do it during your lifetime. And again, to avoid these things that we've been talking about for a few minutes. Now, I think you said something about if you're going to.
There are more things. There are more things to it.
Okay.
So the simple answer would be: should you add them to the title or not?
No, the answer is no.
No, the answer is no. Based on what you just said.
Yeah.
I have a good question, and Nilpuri, that's her. I'm saying her, but I'm not sure. I'm going to say her because it's Puri. She asked a good question. I'm going to read it in Bangla and then pass it to you. আমরা যারা বাড়ির মালিক আছি তারা মারা যাওয়ার পর তাদের সন্তান কি বাড়ির মালিক হতে পারবে না? This is a very common question, and it's a very good question. So she asked, I'm assuming she owns a house. She said, the people who own the house or a house or the house, whatever, if I pass, right, should my kid or kids be, the house gets passed down to their kids automatically or not? That's the question.
Okay,
right?
so yes. So
that's a very...
excellent question, because I hear it all the time.
Right.
So in Bangladesh, it is automatic, okay? Not in New York. So if she were to not do anything, then now that we've educated ourselves, right, she would die intestate. Now you heard the 4 or 5 bad things that come with that. So the answer is you don't want to just not do anything. It does not happen automatic. Even, and we had discussion in the prior
one, yes.
that even if the husband is on the deed, okay, and the wife is not, it's not automatic the wife gets it. She has to go to court, right? And we had that horrible discussion where that sister, she has cancer, her husband passed away, and she has to do it. So yeah, it's not automatic.
Okay, so after simple questions, it's not automatic. আপনাকে কোর্টে যেতে হবে, আপনাকে অনেক কিছু প্রমাণ করতে হবে, and the state will come, they say, okay, nobody owns it, so we may want to take it back.
It is a possibility.
It's a possibility, and that happens. Yeah, and after all this drama, if you get this, the IRS is going to come and say, hey, here's the tax for the fair market value for this house.
Absolutely.
আপনার মার্কেটের বাড়ির মূল্য ধরুন আপনি যখন ক্রয় করেছিলেন $500,000, let's say এখন এটা $1 million. The IRS will say, hey, this is my portion with the tax from the capital gain.
Yes.
So আমি প্লিজ আপনারা যারা বাড়ির মালিক আছেন, this is জেনে রাখবেন, আপনার বাচ্চা, আপনার সন্তান automatic না if you don't have a trust or will.
Okay, the reason why we're also doing this, right? I remember speaking to the CEO of TBN, and one of the things he said is that this discussion will hopefully create a generational transfer of wealth, right? So our children lose a third of that,
of course,
right? A third in taxes for no reason, right? So I think this discussion is not just about talking about it. It's like real world, right?
It's going to affect you at one point or at some point of your life. It's just a matter of time. One good question came, because I want to move on to other discussions, and I think this is also valid. Her question is, who decides as a trustee? He or she must be. The question is, if somebody is become a trustee, should that person be a U.S. citizen, or anyone can do it?
Yeah, we had an answer in the previous session. Yes, the person. And short answer is they need to be a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
The reason we're concerned that the IRS will consider this trust a foreign trust, so we don't want that, because that will break you into a different tax bracket.
Yeah.
So we definitely don't want to do that. So U.S. citizen.
So U.S. citizen. I mean, it's possible for somebody else to. Non-citizen also can, but the consequences are horrible.
Yes.
So maybe we'll touch it at a different time. I have a different question, but let me start as a softball question first to you, which is, what is the best way to pass your home to your kid or kids, gift or trust, while you are alive, while you are you are a living person?
I think we had answered this question. The question
so
we were going to talk about.
I'm going to tell you what we're going to
husband and wife.
Yeah. So okay, let's go to that question, because we
had a nice discussion previously.
Right. So husband and wife, they have the down payment, but they don't have good credit. So they decided, hey, one of my kid has good credit. I'm going to use that child to qualify to get the house.
Right.
Meanwhile, let's make believe they have few other kids, or 2 or 3 other kids. I want to hear what happens in this scenario, cons and pros, advantages, disadvantages.
So, advantage obviously is that they qualify for the loan and they get the property, right?
Right.
Now here's the huge cons, right? All right. So how are they going to take title? Right. So we're going to break down like the different types after we discuss.
So you're going through how the title is held.
Not right now.
Not right now.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So right now we have husband and wife. Right. That's how they're going to take title. Right. When they qualify for the loan. So it's going to be husband and wife, and then the son will be a joint tenant right of survivorship. Most likely they do. They're going to have the son as a joint tenant's right of survivorship, or a tenants in common, right? So either way, something has to happen, right? Some kind of ownership there's a relationship between the mom and dad and the child. So a lot of people, when I see them, meet them for contract signings, they don't understand. I have to take a few minutes to explain to them that once husband and wife, that's like almost like 50%. Then you have the son or child, that's 50%. So once the parents die, if it's joint tenants or right of survivorship, meaning their relationship with the son, then the son inherits 100% of the property.
What happens to the other kids?
They get cut out.
They don't get nothing.
They don't get anything. Right? So this is the catch, right? So when I say that to the parent, then they say like, wow, so what do we do? And so what we try to do is to say, listen, put the child on as a co-signer, right? They say, oh no, I want to add all the kids to the deed, to the title. Again, that's horrible. Again, why? Again, taking these notes that we're talking about, right, in these sessions that we have with Brother Habib. Again, your property is now going to be right? Be part of the marital estate, right?
Yes.
So you're opening yourself up to possible divorce on the kids, and now your property now is in litigation, right? And you're not going to be able to keep it because somehow it has to be sold to satisfy, or those interests have to be sold to satisfy the in-law, right? So I always tell people, please, 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 just use the child as a co-signer, okay? And I know sometimes the child is really taking $50,000, $100,000 out of their pocket. That's a different story.
That's
right?
a
They should
story.
be on title, right?
Yeah.
And they have their interest. But if you're just using the child, right,
just
it's
to
your money.
Just to qualify.
Just to qualify.
Right.
I would not put them on. Tell your loan officer to just make them a co-signer, and they will not be on the title. They'll just be on the note and the mortgage, and that's it.
And that's about it.
Yep.
Now, let me ask you, that actually it leads me to this question. So how is the title held? That's one. Mm-hmm. And then I want you to go a little bit deeper. Types of ownership, mm-hmm. Tenancy in common, and joint tenancy with the rights of survivorship, mm-hmm. and LLC. Okay. I want you to take your time to describe, because I brought in so many things here.
So, and why is this important, right? So I'll go through them and I'll tell you what happens on each of those scenarios. So let's say you have two people who are buying a house. They can either hold it in what's called tenants in common. So each person gets to distribute their share according to how they want. All right, it doesn't automatically go to the other joint tenant. It goes to the heirs of the owner, the joint owner. What's significant about this is that each tenant in common, each joint owner can sell their interest to somebody else. So that's a bad scenario, because when you have person A and person B, B sells, A is now tied to B, the person that B sold to. Maybe you don't like the guy.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
Maybe you hate the guy.
Yes.
Right? Or now, let's say the person that you sold to, that B sold to, he dies. Now you're tied to the person who bought B's share.
Yeah.
Their heirs.
Yeah.
How do you like to deal with strangers? Right? You just have a property, you own 50%, and you're tied to the heirs of somebody you don't even know.
That's the tenancy in common.
That's the tenants in common.
Okay.
Joint tenants right of survivorship means that the survivor gets it, right? Basically, the last survivor gets it.
Right.
Again, little nuance on this one. They have the same right, that in the sense of the tenant in common, that they could sell their share. So always remember that just because they have a joint tenant right of survivorship doesn't mean that you will not be tied with somebody else. They can sell it. Now, so again, you just got to be very careful on these joint tenancies. Maybe have some agreements that you can do. Maybe you can put a restriction in the deed that prevents one joint owner from selling their shares. There's a couple things that you can do. That's something we have to discuss in private. But basically, the survivor gets it. So just be careful. So if you have two friends, both invested $100,000 in transaction, and they do it as joint tenants right of survivorship because they weren't thinking. Now, if A passed away, guess what? A's heirs just got cut out. A's wife got cut out. A's kids got cut out. By operation of law, B owns it.
Right.
So again, this is the thing that you got to be very, very careful on. So again, I can't tell you what to do. It all depends on the factual scenario, which one you should do. Then you have
The LLC.
The LLC, right? So in LLC, obviously you're taking in a corporate form, just like a regular corporation. Again, same issues pop up as far as ownership, but I would say that, when you do an LLC you use it basically for investment properties. When you do that, and if you're going to join with somebody, just know the person. He's got to be like your best friend, because that person could, because they're not recorded. None of these documents, all these corporations, all these LLCs, they're not recorded. So I can put you on, 100% owner on corporation, A, and no one knows, right? Because all you have to do is get copies of it. So that's why, these things are very, very tricky. You're thinking that you're
the LLC, I have some questions that I think it's going to be interesting for a lot of people to know. I'm going to bring it in because sometimes people, 3, 4 friends, they get together and say, hey, let's buy few rental properties, and then we're going to put it into a LLC. So I'm going to come to that, but we have few people. I want to take at least one call, Rao, if this is okay with you.
But I don't want you to feel that just because you have an LLC that you can't put into a trust.
Well, I'm coming to that.
Right.
And so how do you do that? Because in this case, you have multiple owners. And
okay, so the multiple owners. All right, so we have multiple owners.
I'm going to come down to this. Let's take the call.
So go ahead. Tell me what you want.
কে আছেন আমাদের সাথে ফোনে?
Hey, assalamu alaikum.
হ্যাঁ, ওয়ালাইকুম আসসালাম।
So I just have one quick question. So my dad currently have a house. It's in Michigan. He's currently paid off. It's under his name. And I recently bought another house. The loan is under my name on the new house. So for my dad's house, what's the best way to add my name as the owner? Do I do estate planning, or do I just add my name on the title?
Right. So we have a really good question. The exact same question he asked. I was going to ask you the questions. What he's asking, you understand what he's asking.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, for the father, because we're trying to
father
make it easy for you.
He passed away.
Yeah. No, he's passed away, right?
Yeah, the father passed away. He and the house. I mean, he owns a house. His father owns a house.
Yeah, but I don't think the father would pass away.
Okay, let's make believe that he's still alive, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. If he's still alive,
right.
I would tell your father to do a trust so that you wouldn't have to go to the surrogate's court in Michigan.
Yeah.
Right? And then you just go to an attorney there, transfer it out, and then you'll be the owner.
Right.
So I'm telling you, that's the easiest way.
That's the easiest way. I want you to repeat that once again. Just, go slow so that he understands. A lot of people in Michigan, because we have many thousands of people watch from Michigan. I want them also to understand that what you just said.
Yeah, so again, most laws in the states are the same, right? The reason we do the trust is to avoid going to the court. You would have to talk to a trust in the states in Michigan, but I would just tell your dad, just go to, again, a trusted state's attorney, create a trust, and then put you as the beneficiary, of the trust, right? So he'll be his own trustee, and then when he passes away, you'll be the owner. But at least, and then he could put it in what's called an asset protection trust. I don't know how again, every law is different in every state. But again, you would ask them, could you put into an asset protection trust so that God forbid you got divorced, you would not lose that property. But that's the easiest way and simplest way.
Yeah. So when it comes to trust,
But if you go onto the deed automatically, which is fine, you can go onto the deed. It's just that property is now part of your marital estate.
Yeah.
Right.
Which needs explanation and some.
And you would not get the stepped-up basis. You would get the property value whatever your father paid.
Right.
So that's the other thing you need to weigh.
Right. So on that, I'm going to tell anybody who's in this kind of situation. Look, in TBN, we don't have too many Affar box, meaning, or expert who's on estate and trust and all estate and trust and wills and whatnot, right? So you can just Google him, and if you have a question, I think it's a live show, right? And legally, sometimes there are some restriction, and then cannot be discussed on public. There's a lot of information that he will require to actually get you the proper advice.
That's why I tell you contact the attorney.
Right. So you don't have to call Affar Box, but if you want to, you can. But you really need to talk to an attorney, and this is an expert, subject matter expert. Whoever is there, need to talk to. Don't take
go to
this decision. Because this is really complicated.
You really need to be a master in it.
So that's what I'm going to say. Anyway, the question that I was at. So few friends got together, bought properties. Let's make believe they have 3 properties. Each one is like multi-store, multi-dual dwelling, right? And it's put under LLC. But they never thought about trust and what's going to happen after then, or while they're alive. So what do you suggest in this kind of scenario when there is an LLC, and how to protect it, and what should be the proper steps in this scenario?
No, that's a great question. I would like to probably do more research on it, but I would tell you initially that you're talking about just a ton of problems, right? So first of all, you have multiple people, right? And you have the LLC with multiple shareholders. You have 4 shareholders, right? Mm-hmm. With multiple properties.
Correct.
Right? Okay. So each person has to have their own trust.
Right.
So because their LLC interest doesn't pass automatically. Okay, it has to pass again, by will or by trust, right? So even if the document says I give such and such person to get it, it doesn't happen like that. A piece of paper doesn't do it, right?
Right.
It has to be done in a way that the courts will recognize, and because what the title company is going to ask you is, well, when you pass away, how did it get to the next person?
Correct.
Right, because it's a corporation, right? It has a you're a stockholder. It's a real estate. It's an asset, right? That has ownership interest. It's just a different form. It's a stock certificate. So how does that person take it? You just don't just give it, right? It has to have somebody has to approve that giving.
Correct.
Right? Because what if this person says that I'm entitled to that share of stock. Yeah. What happens if this person says that I'm entitled to the share? So that's why it has to, again, I would put each one of those LLC, the membership interest, I would put it into a trust. So you'd have 4 separate trusts.
Yeah.
Just say you have 4 separate interests.
Right.
All we're doing is assigning it. So we take the operating agreement, we assign the person's membership into a trust.
Correct.
And then the trust controls.
Got it.
So that's how we're doing.
So I know you briefly mentioned title insurance. Maybe we'll talk about it. I think that's really important. But I have a follow-up question, right? So you heard the gentleman called, and he said the scenario about transferring the deed, right? So what happens if parents or somebody decides I'm going to leave the house for my kids or a kid? We know there are, the process is not that simple, because you may get caught with the IRS, tax and capital gains and whatnot. So how can you leave your house to your kids without costing them thousands of dollars? How can you do that?
Yeah,
what are the processes?
It's kind of repetitive in the sense that you put it into a trust, but we create in our trust what are called separate share trusts, asset protection trusts. So we make sure that when they get the property, we've maximized some of the what's called the exemptions. So you're allowed to pass, between husband and wife, about $14 million to your kids. So it depends. Like if the person has more than that, then yes, we would create a more sophisticated trust. But just a basic trust, we would just create an asset protection trust.
Right.
And I'm simplifying something, but it's an asset protection trust. That's a separate share trust for each child. And again, when they go into an attorney, they'll get a new affidavit of trust, which will certify that they're the successor trustees of their trust.
Right. Right. And this is a scenario.
And the IRS just recognizes it.
Right.
So you don't have, all you have to do is, it's just, these are all just some elections on the tax returns. And then once you notify them that you're the new owner of that trust, that's it. They recognize that no capital gains is.
What is important here to understand, I'm assuming that the house is not paid off. So in that case, IRS comes and say, what is the fair market value for that house? And that's how it goes, right? And
yeah, we would do an appraisal. So
you're going to do a new appraisal.
Yeah, I would do a new appraisal, and then the accountant would recognize that this is what the new basis is, and then he has his support. He has his appraisal.
Fatima Khan, I do not understand your question. আপনি বাংলায় লিখতে পারেন। আপনি লিখেছেন যে we have affordable houses. Can it be a private house? I don't understand what it means.
Maybe she can clarify later.
Yeah. I'm just going to tell you. Okay, so that is one scenario. When the house is not paid off, meaning it's still owned by a bank, right? What if you inherit something, a house, not something, a house, or a property, or multiple properties, that is paid off. That is paid off, right? And no mortgage, nothing. But they passed away, let's say the parents passed away without leaving a trust or a will. So what happens then?
It would just fall under the intestacy.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that person will, what he loses.
Again, as we said earlier.
I know, just to briefly touch on, because I know you went through it in the beginning of the program.
Again, you're losing it becomes marital estate, so you're subjecting it to divorce. You're losing the stepped up basis, right? You're losing it, so you end up paying capital gains tax. There's a cost. The cost to do the intestate proceeding is much more than doing a trust. So yeah, those are the 3 or 4 things.
The 3 or 4 things.
Yeah.
Let me go into a very important technical thing that I want to hear from you is the importance of title insurance. So what is title insurance? Why it is important?
So when you're doing these trusts, title companies do recognize it, right? And what is title, right? Title is just an insurance policy. It's just like car insurance, health insurance, life insurance, right? Know that even in life insurance, they guarantee everything. If you pass away, they will insure you, right? They'll give your beneficiary a certain amount of money, whatever it is that your policy, right? But there are exceptions in that policy, right? What's that exception? One exception is if you commit suicide. They will not honor that policy. Right? That's an exception in the policy. Titles work the same way, right? So in New York State, for whatever reason, Cuomo had passed a law that it's optional, right? But it's not optional, right? So just like health insurance, car insurance, it's not an optional thing, right? I mean, you have to have it. There's so much fraud out there, and so many cases that I have right now that somebody pops out of the woods, right? He says, hey, dad passed away, no one notified me, I want my share. So now they try to vacate that deed. This title insurance will represent you for as long as you live, your wife, your children, your children's children. It lasts forever, mashallah. I mean, it's really amazing. It runs with the property. As long as you're not changing it out of your name, the family name, that title insurance runs. And basically, it's insuring you against judgments, liens, encumbrances. It's protecting you against wild deeds. Let's say somebody gave a deed out to somebody else. It protects you against, mortgages, fraud, all these type of things. So I would tell you that, and especially now that New York City has really ramped up its efforts on trying to collect on these liens, HPDs. Yeah. So they're turning these HPDs, which used to be for garbage and whatever violations on quality of life, they're now assigning a monetary amount. So if you have this title insurance, it really is important, because when you get it, let's say you get it through the foreclosure, $100,000 worth of liens could be cut off. There's a law that basically says that if they're named and served, and then the foreclosure occurs, those are no longer existent. Right? They're barred. If it occurs after that period, after the foreclosure, and new liens are popping up, right? They're not covered, right? So this title insurance basically is what it sounds like. It insures title. It ensures that you're safe in your home. Right? Now, what part that the title company does not cover? Title does not cover, and this is always a misconception, it doesn't cover the CVO.
Yeah.
It doesn't cover that.
Right.
It doesn't cover violations. It doesn't cover proposed widenings, emergency repairs, fire searches, right? All of these things are for informational purposes only. But every attorney worth their salt does order them, or should order them, so that they can see that these things will affect the usage of the property in some way. So so title is extremely important. I don't know why people have this misconception that they don't want to get it.
That's not knowing. I mean, we are here, especially you are here, to let them be in the knowing, right? 100%. So that's Fatima Khan, you tried to clarify the question. আপনি পরিষ্কার করে বলার চেষ্টা করেছেন প্রশ্নটি, but it's not making sense to me. When a private house can be made by the application in government case somehow. What do you mean? আপনি একটু চিন্তা করে লিখবেন। Anyway, আমরা এই অনুষ্ঠানটা আবারও করব পুনরায় এবং আপনারা দেখতে পারবেন।
One of the things I want to on that question you asked, when the house is paid off.
Yeah.
Well, what happens when the house is not paid off?
That was my first question, but I want you to clarify this, and then I have a very good question from Islam Kabir.
So you have a mortgage on the property,
right? You have a mortgage. It's a lien, basically.
So it's still there.
Right.
So what you'll do is that lien doesn't disappear. Okay, it's still there. Why? Because the property is securing it. So what you'll have to do is just reach out to the lender and just notify them that your mother or father passed away.
Here's the new owner.
Yeah, and we're the new owners. And they'll probably ask you for your trust documents or whatever documents.
Yeah, and then if you don't have a trust,
and then they're going to assume, they'll probably fill out an application for you to assume that loan. I don't know. I mean, that the lender will tell you how they want to play it.
Yeah.
Right.
And each lender is different.
Every lender is different.
Each state is different.
Right.
But normally,
the loan doesn't disappear.
Yeah, that's
basically
loan
the
stays
point
there.
of this conversation.
It is not like any other credit card loans. When a person dies, it disappears.
And the reason is there's a difference, right? One is secured and one is unsecured.
Unsecured, yeah, because it's a property. It's tangible. You can touch it. Islam Kabir had a question before I go to somewhere else. I have one condo. He has one condo, and 2 family house. And I want to give it to my kids. We kind of touched it. What kind of benefits can I get? He's talking about what does he get?
The only benefit he gets is
Hasana.
The benefit he gets is that he's getting 100% of his property going to your children, and not 60% or 70%, right? But one of the things I think this brother you may want to think about is that if one of the properties is going to be like the generational home or the family home, right? So like my dad has this house in Florida, so he gave us our properties, but he left one property that's going to be shared for the grandkids.
Okay. So no one person.
So that's a particular type of trust, right? It's called a cabin trust or a family trust. So
interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it's applying to that brother, but for some of you, that are wealthy and you have several houses, or maybe not several houses, but you have like your main home and you have a family home that you bought in Florida.
Yeah. I'm assuming, but I think he's saying maybe, right, that if I'm giving this to my kids, with the trust or will or however, right? What kind of benefits? Is he alluding to IRS benefits?
No, he may be. No, but he may. So in that instance, again, that is a question I will get back to him on.
Right.
So then, because you really need to talk to like a tax attorney to see how that
benefits him.
It may, but I think it's mostly just for the generational transfer of wealth and not so much like a economic benefit to him.
Or it could be both.
Yeah, I don't think so. But again, I will get back to him on that.
Okay.
If there is a tax benefit for
there are many things we can talk about. We're almost towards the end, and I know I have time to time we talk, and I borrow knowledge from you, so that we have a constructive show. I always wanted to ask you this question: there are tons of attorneys out there, CPAs out there. They practice law, real estate. If I ask you a question, I hope it is okay. What makes you different? What makes you different from them? Why you feel so confident that you are different? What are those things?
So why? So I always
if I were a prospective customer, I would say, tell me why would I come to you?
Why should I come to you? Right. Basically, I tell them first, I'm not even tell you how great I am. Right. I'm going to say let my customers tell me. Right. So we have more 5-star reviews than any real estate attorney in the state of New York. Right. So that's like hundreds of thousands of attorneys out there. Thank God I have the most. Right. That's not me. That's my customers telling me that, right? And I think some of the things that we do are just different. We go that extra mile. So what are some of those things? Number one, when you come in to sign a contract, unlike any other attorney, we've already run your CFO search.
Okay.
We've already checked your DOB violations. We've already checked for open permits and alterations. So most of the times, those are the issues that pop up during a transaction. So 99.99% of the attorneys will just wait until they run the title search, which is like a month later.
Right.
I find that out in
which
the
takes another 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes longer.
Let's say even 4 weeks, right? You're into the transaction, right? 30 days.
Correct.
Now you've just spent money on your let's say title fee, attorney's fee. You spent money on appraisal. You spent money on inspection. You've done all those things, and then in 30 days you find out you can't buy the house because you thought you were buying a 2-family, but it's a 1. I do that search before you sign a contract. So many times I've had clients who 3-4 times they've tried to buy a 2-family, and I prove to them
that is not a 3-family.
Yeah,
that is
or whatever you thought you were buying.
It appears to be, right?
Because it's being used. Because don't get caught on this, right? Don't get caught on taxation versus DOB, right? So you may be taxed as a 3-family, but it's a 2.
It's a 2.
Yeah. So you're going to get a violation. You're going to get a vacate order, right? So that's one of the things that really separate me. I have clients tell me all the time that that's just amazing, that we've already done that search before they come and sign. So that makes me feel good in my heart, right?
Okay.
Right? So that's definitely one of the things, right? The fact that I've used to do securities litigation, so I have a great background on litigation, right? So when we're able to go against these investors, a lot of the Jewish investors, they can't push us around, right? So I think that my clients also appreciate the fact that we're able to, although I don't do the litigation, I know it like the back of my hand, we get the attorneys to protect them. I've never lost a client's down payment after 20 years, $7,000.
You never lost a client's down payment in 20 years, you're saying?
Yep, 7,500 closings.
7,500 closings?
Yeah, we've never lost a client's
Wonderful.
down payment.
That speaks a lot in terms of volumes and stuff.
Yeah.
Any last advice that you want to give after tonight's show?
No, I think that we're pride. We take pride in the work that we do. I have a staff of 7 that just focus on real estate. I do the trust and estates myself personally because I just love it. But I mean, you're talking about a staff that has, some of my staff has been with me 20 years, and whenever we do the title, they do it from the real estate attorney's mindset. So I wear the hat of the surveyor, the hat of the architect, because I used to do investments, so I understand new construction. I understand the violation. I understand the plans that are involved. Right? So I think that is something, again, I'm probably one of the most well-rounded attorneys that you can get because I understand the investment, the architect, the surveyor, and all that stuff.
Affar Baksh, that concludes our Tonight Show. I'm going to say goodbye to you.
No, I appreciate you having me.
I'm going to be very happy to have you back again, hopefully next month, sometimes, or maybe after. But we will see. We'll schedule a time. I thank you very much for your time, by the way. দর্শক আপনারা যারা অনুষ্ঠানটি দেখছিলেন, আশা করি আপনাদের অনুষ্ঠানটি ভালো লেগেছে। অনেক কিছু বলেছি, হয়তো যখন সোশ্যাল মিডিয়াতে দেখবেন আপনার সুযোগ হবে এটিকে থামিয়ে পুনরায় দেখার। যে কোনো প্রশ্নের জন্য আপনারা আমাদের পরবর্তী অনুষ্ঠানে যোগাযোগ করতে পারেন। যেখানে থাকবেন ভালো থাকবেন, সুস্থ থাকবেন, নিরাপদে থাকবেন TVN 24 এর সাথে দেখা হবে পরবর্তী অনুষ্ঠানে। শুভরাত্রি।
TVN 24 টেলিভিশন দেখতে আজই কল করুন 7187776556। লগ ইন করুন www.totalcablebd.com।
নিউ ইয়র্ক থেকে সম্প্রচারিত TVN 24 টেলিভিশন বিশ্বজুড়ে বাঙালির কণ্ঠস্বর।